All right. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to start with a really quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Henry. So when we came up with the Hyperion Solutions Conference idea, or when Edward came up with that, he was like, we've got to bring back speakers that spoke at Hyperion Solutions 2007. And so we tried to reach out to as many of the speakers as we could find that we know, but Henry, of course, is longtime family member of the interRel community. And so, I think, you know what, Henry, I'll let you tell the story, but Henry was one of the original presenters at Hyperion Solutions. So we're kind of bringing back one of his presentations, and then he added me in the mix because he has the fortunate status of being retired, so I'll kind of help cover some of the later versions that he has not had the enjoyment time to enjoy in his retirement. So Henry, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tracy. Just for the record, I actually didn't present at Solutions. I was there and I was around and involved. I presented later on, but when people always say, you're retired, why are you doing this? Well, there's some people that when they ask, you say, okay, sure. So Edward asked, would you do this? I did it. I said, fine. And so here we are. So, and of course, I lived this for so many years that it just seemed very fitting. What is the worst version of Hyperion? And why is it System 9? I don't know how many times I heard, not yet, be patient, you'll have a chance to upgrade. So here's a little about me. I had spent 40 years in computing and finance. Most of my time was at Phillips Petroleum, which then became ConocoPhillips when we merged. I did Essbase. I used to see their designer, implementer, trainer. I basically was the go-to person at my company in the business I was in for Essbase for about 20 years. I finally retired from there, did a consulting in a year at interRel, did a consulting in a year as independent, and looked around and said, why am I still working? It's time to have fun. And so I finally decided to call it quits. And now I spend my time, I have 3 grandkids plus 1 on the way. We moved to be closer to our grandkids. They're about 4 blocks away, so we can spend a lot of time with them. I spend my days playing bridge when I can. In fact, if I wasn't doing this right now, I'd be online right now playing. And we try to travel. And so here's a little bit about the things that we get to do. Those are my 3 current grandkids. There's 1 coming. You see the bridge, I do that a lot. And that is a picture of one of the ships that my wife and I went on recently. And cruise traveling is something we really enjoy and we will be doing again as soon as possible.
What's your criteria for getting back on a boat with everything? Vaccine.
Until there's a vaccine, I think the cruise ships are doing a really, really good job of their plans for how they're going to do things. We cruise on a line called Regent 7 Seas. They're same size ships, but a lot less people. So there's a lot less people to be around the areas. The biggest ships they have 750 passengers. The smallest are 490. And it's really kind of nice in that regard. So that's not going to be an issue. But yeah, I want to know it's safe. I'm older and the safety is important. We've actually had 3 cruises canceled this year, and that's fine. I'm glad they did that. So we'll do one later on. But yeah, I want to be safe and I want to know I'm going to be around for a while because I want to play with the grandkids. That's what it's all about. And a lot of you have heard this, and I heard it too, and I didn't believe it. It's true. You really are busier in retirement than you were when you were working. It is amazing how quickly your time will fill up.
I think we're going to spend the rest of the presentation being jealous.
So here's our journey. And I said there we started with version 5, and that's what we really had when we first got really into the thing. We actually brought Essbase in the late 90s, and I think it was either 3 or 4. I really don't remember because I didn't do very much with it. The only thing I remember about that is that we had one database. It was called the Strategic Capital Allocation Model. And of course, we have to abbreviate it right. So if you take the first letters, you get SCAM. Seemed fitting at the time. And then, so version 5, but we were always behind the scenes. We were always a version or 2 behind. So when I went to boot camp, we actually learned version 6. We upgraded pretty quickly to that. Attribute dimensions was the big thing, and I couldn't think of any databases I didn't use a lot of those in. It was without a doubt one of the biggest tools I had. Later on, we got to go to version 11, and we added LROs, linked reporting objects, and did a lot of text. And I did my case code presentations were all about text. and how you can use text and doing things. And you'll see some shots later on of a variance summary we did where we actually got to add all the comments about all of our different budget to actual variance comparisons and whatnot. Very big thing, very important. We use the Excel add-in. I was curious, so I called my old company. Believe it or not, they are still using the Excel add-in today. We never, ever converted to SmartView. Just didn't happen. And I was happy to retire in January of 16 and move on to the next phase. And so that's kind of my journey. Essbase was a very big thing for my last probably half of my career. I did a lot of work in it, a lot of databases, a lot of things. It's a great tool. Can't say enough about it as we went through. But being behind and missing out on some of this stuff and didn't get to use it all. The conferences are great. You learn a lot. And I'd go home and try to use it, and we weren't quite there yet, but you get there. So it's good to have these kind of things as you learn to see what you can do. Pick up all these tips and tricks as you go along. And you're going to see why. The title is self-evident. You'll see why. If you lived it, you know why.
So quick note about me, just since I get to join Henry in this presentation, Tracy McMullen, I have 20 plus year career in EPM and BI, and I just celebrated my 15-year anniversary at interRel, which is pretty amazing and crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. I have presented a bunch of the solutions conferences, CaseScope, Open World, and I wish retirement were in my immediate future. I think I could get my kids out of high school through college, and then at that point, you know, we'll see. So, but I'm excited to join you guys today. So first thing, and I think Henry and I are going to have kind of an interactive presentation as we go through and help you guys reminisce on some of the earlier versions. And so then that way we can kind of do an evaluation, right? Touch points on all the versions, so we can figure out truly which one was the worst version. You know, I pulled out some of our old slides, which was really fun, you know, and one of the questions was, you know, what is Hyperion? You know, Hyperion was the original EPM, right? That had a closed solution, it had a planning solution, it had reporting, and all of that still holds true. And I think that's why, you know, our Hyperion Solutions Conference, the name is stuck because that's kind of what we correlate. Hyperion is that way of, you know, tying our operational reporting analysis to financial plans, providing insight to users, business user systems, providing information, you know, so that we can take action, right? And some of the key products that were associated that, Essbase Planning, HFM, whole bunch of different reporting tools. So we're going to kind of jump through that today. So if we go back kind of to the original, Edward is going to touch a little bit on some of this history in his keynote tomorrow. So I'm not going to spend as much time. If we kind of go way, way back, I think the original solution created microcontrol IMRS, which eventually became the Hyperion software, which had Hyperion Pillar and Hyperion Enterprise. Henry, did you have any experience with any of kind of the enterprise pillar? Or were you guys were strictly?
No, we started with, it was always Essbase, and we only ever had Essbase. Hyperion has a lot of products, but we only ever used Essbase. We never used any of the other Hyperion products.
So then kind of in the history, you know, kind of we go back in history, that's when Essbase came about, right? So Essbase in the year, I think it's 1992, we also got a really great tool called Wired for OLAP. You know, I think I still actually have my Wired for OLAP training manual somewhere in the attic. You know, so that was kind of our tool that sat on top of web analysis. It was the original dashboarding and visualization tool for our Essbase solution. We then had Hyperion acquire Essbase. So the two merged together, and I think that's when really things started, you know, kind of coming together. So we had Hyperion Planning that was created. So if we talk through versions, we had Hyperion Planning 1.0, HFM. Those were some fun versions. I think Hyperion Planning really got usable maybe around the 3 version. You know, and then HFM again was a good tool. Hyperion actually acquired Brio which was a great relational reporting tool. And then they worked to do some development to get it to create, connect, and reporting, dashboard, and analyze against our Essbase tiers. They acquired Raza, so you guys maybe have DRM today. If you want to go back to the history of that, it actually was a Raza tool created by Doug Cosby, who is still with Oracle today, who actually architected EDM with his team of folks. But it was Raza, and then I think they renamed it to MDM and DRM. So that was kind of the original DRM. Upstream. So this is our current data management. Originally it was Upstream. They acquired it. I can't remember if they named it FDME. I think they called it FDM right when they acquired it. This is the original fishes going across the top. And I think we love the fishes. They stuck around for a long time up until I think this current version is when the fishes go away. Feedware, decision engineering, few other tools. So Hyperion adopts some important children. They've become part of the suite. And my screen is stuck. There we go. So then they also did some renaming during the process. So they adopted all these children and then were like, no, let's give them naming. And some of these names should start looking familiar because this is around that infamous System 9 version where we renamed Hyperion Reports to Financial Reporting. We renamed Wired for OLAP, which became Analyzer, which became Web Analysis. They even tried to rename Essbase BSO and ASO. Thankfully, these names did not stick. So we had Essbase Analytics, Enterprise Analytics. There was a metrics builder, kind of a KPI solution. Again, we had Raza, which was the MDM solution. Does anybody remember Hyperion Application Link? That was one of our data integration tools that we used actually prior to Upstream. And again, Upstream's when then they renamed it to FDM. So Hyperion System 9. So, this is where what the, really good intentions in trying to kind of bring all of these tools together. Prior to that, they were kind of individual tools. So you had to set up security separately, you had different repositories, et cetera. So they tried to kind of bring this together in System 9. And it became very complicated because they tried to bring it all together. There was a pretty complicated repository under the covers. Again, common security was really good intention, but it took a few patches to get that really working the way that it needed to. So that we kind of call that Hyperion's midlife crisis. And we kind of went from, where EPM and Essbase was very simple to more complicated. And Henry, do you think that's part of why you guys never actually kind of went through the larger adoption? You just wanted to keep it simple with Essbase?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us is that since we only had Essbase, we didn't gain anything. I mean, with the foundation services and the security management, some of the things they had in place seemed like a great idea until and we'd always talk about it because there were features in System 9 that weren't available for us. We were still back on version 6. So there were certainly some features and things. ASO, we couldn't do that because version 6 didn't have that. It was version 7. But the pain involved in going to 9, all the things we had to add into it, it just didn't make sense. So we just kept saying, no, let's wait. And it got more complicated to install. And if you didn't have the right version here, you had to go there. At one point, we were told we had to move from 6 to 7 before we could go to 9. Then you had to uninstall. It wasn't worth it. So nice idea, nice things, but no.
Yeah. So then, kind of the big change was when Oracle purchased Hyperion in 2007. So that's why 2007 was the last Hyperion Solutions Conference. And that's kind of, our theme is we're bringing it back, some of the awesome content and fun in this particular conference. So, and with that, kind of the Oracle Hyperion children, we got some more renaming. Really, a lot of times they just threw Oracle in front of it, but they did do some renaming. We got some new tools. We got new solutions. So profitability and cost management, HPCM was the acronym we used to use. Crystal Ball was another tool. And that's really kind of the precursor, or was the foundation for the predictive analytics that we have today. And that just comes with our EPM subscription. Essbase Analytics Link. So we, again, HFM was not built on Essbase database, but we wanted to have kind of Essbase reporting kits with it. So there was a kind of an integration tool that we could use called EAL to integrate the data. And then of course there was Exalytics, which was the future, right? And super fast performance, all of that, up until the point that Larry Ellison announced they're going to be moving all of what used to be called Hyperion. We're going to move that to the cloud. We're going to give it more capabilities. It's going to run faster. It's going to be set up for you. It is going to be cheaper. And honestly, that has happened. That is 100% kind of where we are today. We started first with all these individual cloud services, or the CSs. So we had PBCS, and BICS, Business Intelligence Cloud Service, DVCS, PCMCS. I don't know if any of you guys remember all the CSs. And so thankfully, kind of in the naming conventions, we've gotten rid of those. And really where we are today, you know, kind of as we go through the evolution of EPM, is we have our EPM Enterprise Cloud subscriptions. There's also a standard subscription as well that really, you know, has taken, and if you've seen the journey of all of those different tools and really kind of pulled it together in a cloud solution, you know, with the latest technology, with a ton of new features, you know, an environment that Oracle manages, so we don't have to worry about it. And we get a lot of new, you know, kind of keeping up with new features and functions is very easy versus when we were in our premise world. We could go anywhere, clients would go anywhere from 2 to 6 years without upgrading a particular version. So like Henry, what was y'all's kind of upgrade timings? I know y'all were a little bit slow moving to, very cautious in your upgrade process.
It was really more about how stable is the product, what do we need? And we stayed on 6 for the longest time because we could use some features, but what we were doing, we didn't need it. It wasn't the end of the world not to have it. And so we stayed there probably longer than we should have. 6 was long since sunset and limited support and those kind of things. When we finally went to 11, it was just, 11 was stable enough. I think it was 11.1. I'm not sure which version of 11.1 we went to. I know 11.2 never came. 11.2 came after I left. It was out, but we never went there before I left. So 11.1.1.4, somewhere in that range, I think, is when we finally went to 11 and got there, because we kind of had, part of it we had no choice. Part of it was there was things we needed to do and move forward. So, but we were on 6 the majority of the time I was doing stuff.
Now, hopefully you guys were all able to watch the keynote session just prior to this one, where Ashish Jain presented great roadmap, great information about the future of Essbase. And so again, kind of the latest versions of Essbase, we actually started with an Oracle Analytics Essbase that was available to us. Kind of where we're going now is the 19C version, which is out. 21C, they're saying maybe hopefully by the end of this year, and then that one's going to be available both in the cloud and on-premise. And we talk about on-premise Hyperion versions. So again, many customers, or most customers, are on some 11X version by now. Right now, 11.124 is going to be supported through the end of 2021 Premier support. And then at that point, you really want to either 1, migrate to the cloud, or 2, upgrade to 11.2. So 11.2 was released in December 2019. It's an out-of-place upgrade. And what it did, interestingly enough, is it undid System 9. It simplified the underlying repository. Really, we're not using what was web analysis, what was the Brio interactive reporting. Some of us still, kind of like, longingly remember and miss those products. Well, since those aren't available now, we finally have all of that stripped out, and it's really much simpler underlying repository. So undid the System 9 version in this 11.2. Some of the features and functions are going to be discontinued in 11.2. So EPMA was a tool that we were using to manage hierarchies across applications. What they're doing instead is they're letting us use kind of a limited use version of DRM to support any clients that were using EPMA that wanted to take advantage of that. We did have some pre-built modules. Those are not going to be supported as well, because they've really been kind of redesigned and optimized in the cloud. So that's the recommended strategy going forward, is that if you want to use the pre-built content, the cloud's in this place to do that. So support for 11.2, what we heard from Matt Bradley is they're going to try and at least have 10 years of support out. So So if you're in 11.124, you definitely need to be planning to do something, whether it's just upgrading to 11.2 or it's migrating to the cloud. And then once you get to the 11.2 version, you have a little bit of breathing room before you have to make any other major changes or plans. But definitely cloud should be, on your radar, which hopefully you're attending some sessions this conference. So let's take a look and a glimpse into some of the features across these solutions. And kind of go down memory lane, of our favorite features and functions, what versions those happened, so that again, help us kind of coming back to what it truly was the worst version. So Henry, I'm going to let you take Essbase 5 and 6 and kind of recapping what was life like when we were using Essbase 5 and 6.
Well, obviously the big things in 5 and 6 is App Manager and the add-in. And the add-in was great. I mean, you remember reporting and you'd set your spreadsheet up and you try to retrieve things. And quite often, if you didn't have things in the right place, you might not get the answer you were looking for. I love their error messages. The one I loved the most was that it would say, currently, multiple reports are not supported in this version, which always leads you to believe that someday they were going to do that. They never did. So that was always fun. But Application Manager, without a doubt, was one of the best tools around. We used it all the way up to the end. Obviously, EAS came in version 7, and it was really very helpful, and it made things easier in some respects. But there were some Application Manager tools that EAS didn't function the same. And so I found myself going back there a lot. Security was one of the biggest things. And the other thing I found interesting was in EAS, when you copied a database, it would always copy all of the security with it. If you went to App Manager to copy a database, it didn't do that. And so if you're making backup copies of databases, you don't want the world to be able to go in there and update them. So you'd make the copy in EAS and have to go change on security. Well, with App Manager, you have to do that. It kept it the way it was, and that was a big tool to me. That was a very important thing.
And couldn't we, I mean, my memory is horrible going back, but couldn't we in App Manager like copy and paste across outlines? We could have
you could go in there and not just outlines. You want an easy way to get a complete outline in Excel, because how many times did you want to be able to send out the outline to the world? And I want you to see what the outline looks like top down. If you go into Excel and do your retrieves and your zooms, it's basically bottom up, right? Well, I want the top measure on the very, very top, and then I want to see all the names coming down the page. If I went into App Manager and clicked on the very top name and copy, went over to Excel and pasted, it would paste it down the page, and you have the outline flow from the very top to the very bottom like you'd expect. That was a very nice tool to have. And yeah, that worked out really, really well. And you could always do that there. You couldn't do it anywhere else.
I think eventually we get that in SmartView. In one of the versions, we're able to kind of switch from a top down, bottoms up. Although I know that there was actually some delays, and I get confused because sometimes there's nuances between planning SmartView connections and Essbase connections. So then we had Essbase 7. So if everybody remembers Essbase 7, that was when we had EAS. And I remember all of us just as consumers, they were like, no, we love App Manager. It's so simple. And now customers are saying, no, we love EAS. And we love EAS so much that they actually are going to deliver a light version of it in 21C. That was news to me today because we have this new web UI. That's what we've been using for OAC Essbase, for, and for Essbase 19C. And honestly, I like it. I'm kind of navigating around. I've got used to it. But I think enough customers have said, no, we love EAS. So it's actually sticking around in the 21C. It's going to kind of move forward. Essbase 7 is where we also got our ASO cubes. We used Essbase Integration Services to join to star schemas to create cubes and then do drill through reports. And that was when the first version of SmartView was released and nobody used it. Everybody still loved the Excel add-in. And I remember countless, conference presentations, not at that time, but eventually trying to get folks, to consider SmartView from the Excel add-in, which again, I think we heard from Henry.
We'd always go to the conferences and they talk about SmartView, and it was obviously going to be the tool down the line, but the answer was always, yes, we know you can do the ad and you can't do it in SmartView. It's coming, I promise. Be patient, it'll be there. And so, yeah, we didn't want to use that kind of thing. And if I remember, our ASO in version 7 wasn't nearly as robust as it is today. As it's grown, it was usable, but not ideal.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Yeah, we've definitely seen it evolve into a very powerful tool. Essbase 9.0 had our data export function, never consolidate, and then that's also when Essbase Studio came out. And then as you continue to go through the Essbase 9 versions, they made improvements for ASO and ASO restructuring. Duplicate member name support, although I don't recommend anybody rarely use that, only if you have to. Extended use of substitution variables. I had forgotten about this one, where you could use them in number formulas in a lot of different places, where prior to that, it was actually really limited to reporting. In 9.3, we got our EAL, incremental loads, and then we start to move into the Essbase 11 version, versions, where again, and I can't, LROs were supported for a while, but I think I think you guys took advantage of it. Once you got to 9, is that when you really started using those?
It was 11. We never used 9. It was 11 we started using them. And they kept telling us LROs were going to go away. And I would always go at the conferences and I'd go grab the guys and say, wait a minute, what are you doing here? We use this. It's very important to us. And they'd tell us, yeah, maybe, no. For right now, it's okay. You should be fine. And so we were able to continue on. And when I left, they were still, as far as I know, they're still using it now.
Yeah. So we get through our Essbase 11, and then really somewhere in the 11 version, SmartView really started to work, and folks actually, most folks, eventually started that transformation process over. So we brought back some fun screenshots, so we could remember. And for those folks who have not had the history with EPM and Hyperion, some of this, should just look funny. Like this, instead of having the scroll ribbon, we had an action menu, and then we had our save double click action from the Excel add-in. EAS, and at one point, does anybody remember when EAS was called AAS? They tried Essbase administration services, and they tried to switch it to analytic administration services. And I think a lot of us were like, why are we trying to get rid of the Essbase name? Everybody loves Essbase. And then, yep, sorry, go ahead.
AAS didn't last very long. It was there for a very short time. It was funny though, watching people try to update all of their templates and whatnot, because the copy, replace, edit, replace, whatever, and people didn't stop to think about that. So the word easy became not easy anymore because they replaced the EAS in that. So we saw several screens. It was kind of funny. So. Yeah. This is a screenshot of our variance template. This is something that I built at my company. It was a really big deal. We had all these monthly, I was in the finance group at this time, and they did their monthly variance reporting, both month and year to date and everything going on. And we built this template, and those little blue boxes you see in there is where they actually were able to, the light blue, they actually were able to go in there and type in their comments. And then the little button up there, the macro button up there, would actually load those textual comments into the database. And the way it did it for LROs is you'd store the text at the intersection of the whatever the member intersection was, and you could store text anywhere. It didn't have to be a level 0 member. It could be anywhere in the database you want to do it. And then you'd have to use some code to go out there and find it and bring it back in. Well, the challenge we ran into was when they built the LROs and loaded the text and everything, and the Visual Basic code to use that, I guess they didn't think about it very carefully. We had 6 dimensions. And that code was built to work with 4. If you had more than 4 dimensions, some of the functionality didn't work properly. So I wound up spending a lot of my time. You couldn't do the old add, change, delete. All you could do is just keep adding. So you add a new one, add a new one, add a new one, have to go find them. So we wound up spending more time going in there and cleaning up and getting rid of what was extra that didn't belong. It was just kind of annoying, but the users loved it because it made it very easy for them to get done what they need to get done and get the comments in, and we could do all of our reporting that way. It was a very, very handy tool.
Another fun feature, varying attributes. This was going to be really exciting to allow attribute dimensions to vary across time, but then nobody really used it. It didn't really take off. Although I did get a question about somebody asking if that was going to, migrate over and be available. So there's probably a couple of people using it. Here's our Hyperion Analyzer. Again, started out as wired for OLAP to web analysis, the original dashboard visualization solution. And then we also had Brio, right? So these are all in our System 9 version, pre-System 9 and System 9 versions, reporting and analysis. And again, Brio came from a relational world and created a lot of different relational tools. And it was truly, then Hyperion worked on developing logic so that Brio, or Hyperion Intelligence and Active Reporting, could connect to Essbase cubes. and it did it really well. So when Oracle acquired Hyperion, I felt certain they were going to say, okay, let's look and see how these people are talking to Essbase, because it could talk to relational, it could talk to Essbase very well. I was like, surely they're going to leverage that because Hyperion finally got it down. But they didn't. They went kind of a different route with OBIE and how that works. So it's interesting kind of how when companies acquire software companies and what happens with maybe some really helpful tools that don't end up making it. We continue through the Essbase Evolution, 11.124. I think I can't remember which version hybrid was actually introduced, but one of the 11 versions, and they continued to improve upon it. Essbase 11.124 is really the current version for on-premise Hyperion today that's going to be supported. They're going to work to continue so if you upgrade your planning application to 11.2, it's actually using Essbase 11.24 underneath the cover. So you're going to work to continue to optimize that. This is where we also saw some of the optimizations related to analytics and really big, fast servers that can support some really big queues. Then Oracle announced OACE Essbase. This is our first Essbase in the cloud, Oracle supported, Oracle managed. We've got a new cube designer to help us build cubes, manage cubes, load data from Excel. We also go to Web UI, kind of a graphical editor. So there was no more EAS, no more Studio. We did everything through the new UI. 19C, the current cloud version today. So this is where, again, they decided to kind of pull Essbase out from Oracle Analytics Cloud so it can be its own standalone database. And we've seen, and hopefully you guys saw in today's session, that they're continuing to evolve Essbase with some of the features and functions that they have. So there's not an Essbase 11.2 for full use Essbase. Again, I mentioned it's 11.2 for underneath the covers. For 11.2 applications, I don't know if they've officially supported it. I heard something different in the keynote today, but I think you're going to be able to use full use Essbase in 11.2. And that be supported, although I swear I saw a slide that didn't say that, but I think there's an announcement coming. I think that customers that upgrade to that are going to be fine in the near term, although you're going to be looking to potentially upgrade to 21C at some point. And so 21C is the next version. You're going to be able to use this version either in the cloud or you can install it on your own hardware. I believe Linux is the first operating system that's going to be supported. If we kind of look through some of the other tools, so we talk about planning, actually Pillar was the very first Hyperion solution. And then we got Hyperion Planning 1.0. Didn't work that great. 3.0 was a little bit better. And then we get to 9. And I just remember one of the game changers when we have runtime prompts and we could create user-specific calcs based on their department. So we didn't have to aggregate the whole database. Those are some fun things that we did in early planning. We had Hyperion 9, where we start to get some more feature rich function around the planning process, so task lists. Of course, you get the System 9 version, which was the common installer, common user provisioning. And then we start to get the pre-built modules, so the workforce module into capital planning, public sector budgeting in 11.2. Calculation manager is introduced in one of the 11.1.2 versions. LCM, or the shared services, lifecycle management, all of those things kind of started to evolve as we go through. 11.1.2.3, we had ASO support for Hyperion planning. There was a tablet-friendly version that sort of worked, but then they've now taken that back away from the on-premise. And then, here's kind of an old screenshot, because sometimes it's fun to just look and see, wow, that looks terrible. But we thought it was really cool at the time when you look at today's kind of UI and interaction. 11.1.2.4, so that one's still supported today, but you guys are going to be looking to upgrade to 11.2. We then had PBCS, the first EPM cloud first EPM product in the cloud. That was where we could actually use the simplified user interface, and we got some of the really cool new features that we had been waiting for. We kind of thought we were going to get them in on-prem. They actually just gave it to us in the cloud. So valid intersections, extended attribute support, and then they just grew from there with the features and functions. We got our pre-built modules with EBPCS, and now with the new enterprise subscription, they've kind of combined it all together in an Oracle Planning Cloud. And then as we heard, planning 11.2 was released in December 2019. Really, it's more of an under the covers upgrade so that you're compatible from an operating system. They simplified the repository and kind of on all the current versions. So no new features. And then I say yet. We might get some. I think they have some potential roadmaps to maybe get valid intersections and some of the attribute support. But I think it's possible we might not ever see that. I don't know for sure. From a close and consolidation standpoint, if we've got our close folks in the house, I didn't really get into kind of close and consolidation to HFM world. Actually, I did work with teams, where we used Hyperion Enterprise to do the close and consolidation. We loaded data into Essbase reporting cubes. So I would do the Essbase reporting cube side with Enterprise. But you could see we went through kind of this evolution of developing best practices from a close and consolidation standpoint. So microcontroller to Hyperion Enterprise to HFM. Everybody loves HFM. Upgrading that to System 9, common installer, common shared services. They extended dimensionality at one point to make it a little bit more flexible, using FDM, so that upstream product to help with the data integrations and kind of bringing that into the solution set. And again, we kind of look at the old screenshots and what they looked like, definitely some older technology. We're now in the 11.124, where there's actually, there were some new features that were introduced in 11.124. In this 11 versions right now with HFM, if you decided you wanted to use Close Manager, there was an additional cost for that. If you wanted to do account reconciliation, there's additional cost for that. So that's one benefit. When you go to the cloud, you kind of get all of those tools, where in the on-prem world, those are still kind of individual solutions. We now have HFM 11.2. So again, mainly customers who are not quite ready to migrate or migrate to the cloud are going to want to upgrade their HFM applications to kind of on a more supported version. And then of course we have FCC. So financial close and consolidation in the cloud. This was a completely re-architected solution. So they of course use the best practices in close and consolidations, but they didn't just take HFM and then move it into the cloud. They redesigned it. We've got Essbase under the covers, which provides a ton of benefits there. All of the different features and kind of growth from an FCC perspective. So which version was the worst? That's kind of our quick recap through memory lane. So I don't like being negative, and I don't like focusing on which one was the worst. So what I would like you guys to do, actually, I'm gonna come back. We have a poll. Let's see if I can. Slideshow. So if you guys can go to this poll, so poll.ev.com/tmcmullen283. So for folks on the webcast, I'm trying to see if I can see my Zoom. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Still, okay, all right. Okay, so if we jump to this poll, what I would like you guys to do.
Wait a minute, we're seeing the background. There's, if you have a poll, we
okay,
can't see
yeah. All right, thank you. All right, so, okay, so let me show, this is when you have multiple monitors. It's like really helpful, but then it can cost money.
It's got to be in place, yeah.
Okay, so here's where we're going. Audience interaction, we need you. So everybody, we should have enough for everybody to answer, because I just have a free account with Poll Everywhere. So here's the link, pollev.com, and let me see, I think I can share this in the chat with you all, so then you can just click on it. Chat, where's my chats? That's interesting. Allie, is there a way for me to chat? Like, why don't I see chats more? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So sending you guys the link, all panelists.
There it is. Okay.
So,
it's not clickable, but they can copy paste.
Yes. So copy and paste.
Tracy, while that's going on, there's a couple of questions that have come in that you'll need to answer. I can't.
Okay, got it. All right. So if everybody can jump in, so then what we should be seeing here, if you guys are answering, does anybody have any, let's see, are there any questions related to the poll? Is everybody able to do the poll? So pollev.com, T McMullen. All right, so this is what's gonna, there we go. All right, so full screen. So again, instead of saying what is the worst, right? It looks like, oh, we've got some ties going on with the responses. And even System 9. This is awesome, guys.
Well, I guess if you had all the products, there were advantages to it. And so we didn't have them all, so it just didn't matter to us. But if you had them all, there was supposed to be a lot of integration supposed to help. So I can understand that.
Yes. All right, so we'll give a couple more minutes. I'm bringing, I like the pre-Essbase 7. We've got some old school folks in the house. But it looks like right now, just our longest running 11X version seems to be winning.
That would be expected.
So, all right. I think we maybe have most of you guys. All right, so I'm going to screenshot everybody's responses so that we've got it. And I can embed this in the next presentation, or if we ever do this again, what you guys said, this is the version. So not the worst version, what's our favorite version? All right, so with that, you know, Henry, I'll start prepping for the questions, but you want to share kind of some of your just last favorite memories?
Well, the Excel add-in obviously was a big thing. You know, we did that a lot. We loved that. It was very advantageous. Eventually, SmartView did do the job. And I tried for the last 6 months to a year to convince our company to switch. They weren't interested in that. And the biggest reason they weren't interested in that was because we had so much Visual Basic code in the Excel add-in, and you had to do a lot of conversion. And so it made sense. Visual Basic was a big tool we used. Application Manager, EAS, we talked about those. I love the attribute dimension, spent a lot of time working with that, and did a lot of work in that area. And then there was the LROs, and I spent a lot of time doing LROs, and that worked out well. I did get tired of hearing it's not a bug, it's a feature. That seemed to be a common comment that they would tell us at times. Or they're going to fix it in the next release, or it'll be available in the next release. You know, it's always one of those, it's coming. And of course, we heard safe harbor, those things. And what did they say? I could be lying to you. It's under safe harbor. It's fine. I'm telling you what I want to tell you. It's fine. And then, of course, the conferences, Kscope. I spent a lot of time at Kscope conferences. The best thing about Kscope was that I could corner somebody from Oracle, or I could corner a consultant, and we could spend 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, talking and visiting. And I got so many questions answered, was able to find out so many things. I turned in some bug reports to Oracle that never got answered. I happened to comment at one point at one of the conferences, and next thing I knew, Oracle was hovering over me, asking questions, getting information, making frantic notes. And I got answers very quickly after that. It was amazing how quickly the responses came in. So the networking, 2008, the very first Kscope, it was called Kaleidoscope back then. Mm-hmm. And the Essbase got added. As you pointed out in the beginning, Oracle bought Hyperion and solutions in 7. And then when 8 rolled around, there was no conference. And so the guy in charge of Kscope, Mike Riley, contacted the 2 best Essbase he knew, Tim Toe and Edward Roski, and said, build me something. And there were about 150 of us. We stayed in the same room the entire week. Yeah. And it was tremendous. And the knowledge is just amazing. And the things you could learn, the things you could see, and the stuff to take back with it. I can't stress it enough. Great thing to do. Great way to do stuff. So that's kind of it. And I enjoyed it. And I've had fun doing it. I'm really glad that Edward asked me to do this. I think it's been fun. I hope y'all have gotten some information out of it and learned a few things. It's obviously nostalgia, not a lot of new stuff, but a lot of things we did in the past that can help going forward. So, thanks for coming and listening. I appreciate it.
All right. And then if you guys have any questions, so we'll go ahead and conclude. I will leave up our full results so you guys can kind of see our summary of what we came together as a group, which was our favorite instead of which was the worst. I don't like to be negative. So one question that came through, how is Essbase 21C different compared to 11.124 Essbase version? So actually, let me pull up because I took some notes even today that had some good notes on kind of some of the differences. A lot of it is under the covers. optimizations and things that they've done with like the hybrid engine and support for some of the functions that are available for 21C. Let's see, and I'm just actually pulling up my notes from the keynote today to help me remember. There's definitely some Cube Designer updates, some things that are in the roadmap that are going to be coming. Now, if you look at Essbase from from 11.124 to 21C, the biggest kind of feature differences that you're going to be able to take advantage of are the new Jet UI and the Web UI. And if you want to use that, which one of the features in there embedded is using connections and data sources. So no more Essbase Studio, kind of how you can create drill-through reports. Those are some differences. We also have kind of different ways you can manage jobs and files. Again, a lot of times you had to have access to the underlying Essbase server if you wanted to go look in the app folder or the cube folder. Now that's all surfaced in the web UI. So even though they said they're going to keep around an EAS Lite, like I actually really like the web UI because it provides just some easier ways of maintaining our Essbase cubes. So definitely kind of that web UI, Jet UI. There's also Cube Designer, so a new Smart View add-in that goes with it to help you. And you can create a cube from like an unstructured spreadsheet. You can create application workbooks to create Essbase cubes, copy cubes. They've got a whole application gallery. So if you're kind of like, oh, I wonder, if I needed to buy to create this type of reporting application, they've actually got a lot of good templates out there for you. So you're not starting from scratch. You can actually use their application workbooks, use their dimensionality, export those out, create your own cubes, add in your own metadata, and off and running. So again, there are some definite differences between 21C and 11.124. Under the covers, it's still Essbase, right? So that will still work, but some of the tools that we have to manage with the Jet UI, with Smart View are some of the big differences that are available to you. There's some other kind of user features like scenario management and creating sandboxes, which can be helpful if you want to use that feature. Super important in today's world where we need the ability to do different scenario plans and modeling and be able to kind of have different assumptions, have different drivers, and see how that flows through. So those are some of the big differences, and it's going to be really exciting. So definitely encourage you guys, upgrading to 11.2, it is definitely something, depending on kind of the speed at which you can move, maybe something that you have to do, but you want to have that eye out to Essbase 21C and kind of the features, functions there. You want to have an eye out to the EPM Cloud and eventually get in there, because that's really where there's some super powerful features that you guys can take advantage of. Any other questions? All right, make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat session.
One last comment about the past, about conferences. It's not just about technical knowledge. It's not just about all the information of the day. Don't miss out on the other fun stuff. There's a session this afternoon at 3:45. It's going to be Family Feud. We had other sessions at the same time and that kind of thing. Quite frankly, I don't know how Family Feud is going to be better than the last one we did. It's kind of funny that you're here, Tracy. I don't know how we can beat that. It was just too funny and too much fun. But it's a great chance to network and meet people. Take advantage of those kind of things. And the musical tomorrow will be a lot of fun too. So I hope you get to come to those things and attend them.
Very good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Henry. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's great. I'll see you at 3:45.
Sounds good.
You're coming to Family Feud? I hope you're coming.
Yes, but I'm watching. I've now learned that I'm not going to be part of any future Family Feud based on the last time that I was in it, because I was super embarrassed. While it was really funny, it was really, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to watch safely from my home computer with no camera, no interaction whatsoever. So that's my plan.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Bye,
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.